All right, thank you very much for attending or watching in the future. Worldwide Slot Car episode number 30, the big 3-0. We're going to be approaching over the hill soon, I guess. I'm your host, Greg Galb. We got lots of people today because it's a federal holiday in the States, and there's probably other people who don't have to work today. So we've got RK, Lloyd, John Kitt, Russ Paver, Kelly Avery, Luff Linkert, a couple of newbies. I'll get to you guys later. Lance and Martin, and with no camera, we've got Chris and Ray and other people. And we've got lots and lots of people using cameras, which is nice. So before we get to general topics and show and tell and stuff like that, I'll welcome some of our new guests to give their little personal slot car related history. Keep jumping around down here. Mr. Longhurst, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Paul. Been racing slot cars since 1970s. I gave up in late 80s. I rescued a track I used to race on in the 80s, which is now in my garage. And I've started racing again. I raced for two local clubs, Shepton, which is now gone to Avon, and which is moved, and the other one is East Devon Club. So, and I love building cars. I don't know if some of you have seen some of the cars I do, but you can't miss them. They're in a Sunoco livery. So that's basically me.
Well, I love me some blue and yellow cars. What are you on some of the forums out there? What handle do you go by?
I'm not on any. I just on the normal Facebook groups I joined.
Okay, so are you the guy that posted that picture of all those Sunoco liveried cars?
Yes, that's me.
Wonderful, you're my man.
And that's part of my truck, you see, as well, because that was all on in front of driver's rostrum. So, yeah,
very nice.
A big track.
Thank you very much for attending. And Gary, I don't think you've been on before, have you?
No, I haven't been on before. I've been
tell us a little
watching on the sideline. Yeah, name's Gary. Here in Australia, early in the morning. It's just gone 6 o'clock. For tomorrow, I can let you know what the weather's going to be like. It's a nice day outside so far. Slot cars, 40 odd years. Moderator on the Oslot forum over here in Australia. If any of you guys ever come over and have a look, very laid back, easy going, no restrictions. Multiple cars, rally cars are like specific. Yeah, just your basic sort of nerdy type of thing. Fit in well with everyone else, except
yep, you're in good company, that's for sure.
Whereabouts in Australia, Gary?
Yeah.
Western suburbs of Sydney.
Okay.
Awesome.
At the other side of Liverpool.
Good to have some more people from down under. Next week will be later in the day, so it might be more convenient for you to join. I don't know what your schedule is.
Yeah, it's a day off today, so well, I'm not working today anyway, so yeah, I thought I'd just join in. Seen you on here a few times, and I don't know how many people from Australia have actually been involved, so I just sort of thought I'd put my nose in and say hello.
We've had a couple. Martin?
Oh, Phil's been on, I think.
Yeah, and I think somebody else.
Tasmania.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's everybody who's never been on before giving their introduction. Does anybody have any show and tell or specific topics or question that they'd like to bring up for discussion or anything before I dig into my list of topics?
Going on about Aussie ones and that, I'm over here as well.
Oh,
I'm on the West Coast.
Yeah. You are down there. Where are you at again? You're cutting out on us. Oh, well, maybe later.
Oh,
so,
I remember it's just outside of Perth.
Just outside of Perth. Okay. Well,
yeah, that might be fun.
Since nobody's jumping up and down saying I want to show something off or I have a question to talk about, I did have an interesting suggestion, and this kind of goes back to something that we have talked about more than once, but I kind of wanted to put a new spin on it. Scott, did you have something you want to talk about before I do our topic? No, just waving hi? Okay. Careful with the waving. If you even catch my attention, I'm going to call on you. There you go. Anyway, so somebody again was asking, what are some of the things that you do, when you get a new car to get it ready for racing? And we've talked about that before, and the problem obviously is what kind of car, what kind of racing, what scale, what track, all of these things. So I decided to take a different spin on it, and that anybody who wants to contribute. But what I'd like to do this time is, you in your mind now start thinking about this. What kind of car, what kind of track, what kind of racing, right? Presumably it's something that you do on a regular basis. So I'll start so everybody can kind of see what I'm thinking by this conversation. I'm going to talk about more or less box stock, hard body slot, 1/32 scale slot cars like Scaly, Carrera, etc. on a plastic track like my Scaly Sport track, and I'll address Scaly Sport specifically because every track is a little bit different. And I'll talk about what I do if I buy a Scaly brand car. What do I do to that car to get it running nicely on my track? So that's what I'm going to talk about. So you guys think about what you're going to talk about, your kind of racing, your kind of car, or whatever, or even ask about a specific one later on if you don't hear somebody talk about it. So I buy a car. Usually I buy it from Allen. Like to support our local businesses. First thing I do is I take it out of the box and I'll run it around the track a little bit. Most of the time we run magless. So after I make sure the car is functional, I'll open it up and take the magnet out and then put the car back on the track and see how functional it is without the magnet. Usually not so much. The next thing that I am going to do is make sure that it has the appropriate level of traction from those rear tires. If I'm just driving this car around on my track for fun, or with other cars on my track, it's not going to be competing in a race with one of my clubs, then I'll generally just sand the back tires. I don't even bother truing them because I'm not competing, I'm just driving around. I want the car to go well, but it's not important to me to get super great lap times. I just want to enjoy the driving of the car. So then I'll just kind of buzz it on some sandpaper, not high pressure, because the more pressure you put on the tires, the warmer they get, the gooey the tires might get, or you might even burn out the motor. Don't do that with a digital chip in it because you might burn out the chip. So I just buzz the tires on sandpaper and then have fun with the car. If I'm going to compete with that car, the first thing to do is to see what the specifications for that racing competition are with my club. 9 times out of 10, it's no magnets and then some kind of tire change. When we're doing Scaly type cars, usually it's a urethane tire. 9 times out of 10, we get those tires from Paul Gage because he makes the widest variety of tires for the widest variety of cars that I know of. And they're easy to get, on eBay. He's got an eBay store, Paul Gage Tires. And we usually get his Super Grip or his Ultra Grip or whatever he calls it. Order up the tires from Paul Gage. Urethane tires work really great on Scaly Sport track. And so when those come in, the first thing I do, I take the tires off the car and I put a little glue on the rim so that the urethane tires stick properly to those rims. And then I'll run the car around. Most of the time, it doesn't run so great. So then the next step of the process is truing the rear tires. So I open up the car, pop out the rear axle, put it on my tire truer. I have a tire razor tire truer. So the whole axle just goes on the bracket. I make sure it's level and I slowly sand the tires down so that they are round and even across the tire. With urethane tires, that goes pretty quick. You can crank it down pretty hard. They don't go gooey unless they're a bad formulation, which is almost never with Paul Gage tires. So that usually only takes maybe 20-30 minutes to get them good to go. And then I put that axle back in my car and stick it on the track and drive it around a bunch. Most of the time, that's it. I don't need to add anything. The cars are relatively heavy, so they don't need weight tuning. Most of the time, the cars are on the tall side rather than short, so you want to reduce the roll tendency. So I usually don't try to have a loose body or anything loose. It's usually pretty tight as long as all 4 tires are touching the slot. I'll make sure that the braids are properly formed and have a little curve to them so they kind of ride the inside edge of the slot, which works really well on Scaly track. And then I'll just make sure the car runs nicely and doesn't come out unpredictably, either understeering or spinning out too easily. If it does things like that, then I'll, usually the specification for the racing series has some limitation on how much weight you can add and whether it has to be one piece or it can be multiple pieces. And more often than not, it's like 10 grams or less in one piece. And I usually put that as close to the front axle or in front of the front axle as I can to make sure that it's putting down as much weight as it can on the front. Usually because the car's understeering. It tips a little bit in the turns, guide comes out and it goes straight. That's what understeer usually means. So a little weight up front helps with that. Braid formation helps with that, so you're not springing it up out of the slot with poorly formed braids. You want them to be flat, but have that little twist, like I mentioned. Sometimes I'll have a car with front wheels, tires that are just terrible. And so in that case, I'll work them free of the chassis and glue the tires on and then true those on my tire truer as well, so that they're as round as they can be. And then carefully put those back on, so that, because when they're pressed wheels, so you don't want to take them off if you don't have to. But in order to get them out of a Scalextric chassis, you got to work at least one of the wheels off so you can pull it out and then put it together. Usually that can be done without too much damage, and then they go together. And since they're not powered, they just roll freely. As long as the other wheel isn't straight up falling off, it's generally fine to race with that way. Sometimes you'll have the wheel get loose because you had to work it too much to get it off the knurled axle. And so a drop of super glue will generally hold that on. If you're really unlucky and you break the wheel because it's just plastic on a knurled axle, then you're going to be trying to, repair it with super glue or get a replacement car. Depends on how bad it was. Generally, that's it for me. Scalextric track on a Scalextric car on a Scalextric track. That's pretty much it. Of course, there are lots of other cars that we race on plastic and wood track, and of course, they have their own things. Now, having spoken for 10 minutes straight, who wants to go next?
What do you use to glue the tires?
Good question. Thank you very much for asking that. Usually, I'll use clear nail polish, like Sally Hansen Hard as Nails or whatever like that, because it holds really well, doesn't destroy the tire or the wheel most times when you need to take the tire off because you want to replace the tire. And it has a longer cure time than super glue does, so you can make sure it's not kind of weird when you stick it back on, and make sure it's all spread around evenly by kind of turning the tire on the wheel. But sometimes I'll use super glue. Yeah, John.
So when you sort of take your car through its various stages of tune, do you do any sort of analysis like lap times, or is it just a feel that you're driving? How do you assess how well the car is progressing?
Me personally, it's all about the feel while it's driving, because for me, you can get a hot lap with pretty much any car if you happen to hit the turns just right. And of course, if the car improves and your hot lap is going to improve. But what I'm looking for is consistency and drivability, I guess. Really, I want to be able to throw that car around the track without it coming out unexpectedly. When it comes out, I want to know, because the way it came out or whatever, it just rolled off like crazy. I'm like, okay, well, obviously I went way too fast for that one. But if I think I'm going the right speed, or I've gone through that turn multiple times at what I feel is the same speed, and then it just comes out, I'm like, okay, there's something hinky with this car. I need to figure it out. Usually it's because it's not all four tires on the track, and some other basic blueprinting type issue. And I don't really care too much about lap time, because when the car is consistent and I can keep cranking out the laps without crashing, I win.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point. Do you use a setup block before you even put it on the track?
Not until it starts exhibiting things that I think I need to do that for. But yeah, I have a wood block. It's like a piece of laminate countertop. So it's like 3/4 of an inch thick. It's got some laminate on top and a slot down the middle. Just a nice flat piece of wood with a slot. Put the car on it and look at it and make sure all the wheels are touching. And if one of the wheels isn't touching, I'll kind of poke the corners to see what makes wheels touch or not touch, and then try to figure out why. Sometimes you just need to loosen a screw or tighten a screw, and then it's fine.
Hey, Greg, if you really want to get funky with the front end, you can use your tire razor and use it for the front whole wheel axle assembly on a Scalextric without taking the wheels off. Most Scalextric cars have a molded in bushing on the front of the chassis, little round bushing. If you take a Dremel tool and cut a slot on the top of the bushing, slightly narrower than the axle, you can carefully pry the axle out. And then if you have some old plastic bushings cut in half or something, you can install those on your tire razor, put the whole axle in and through the whole assembly. It's generally strong enough that the axle won't pop out unless you have a really stupidly bad crash. And if you're worried about that, once everything's true and done, you can put a little bit of a styrene cap back over the bushing on top. And now you're going to get a lot truer front wheel and tire assembly because of that.
That is a fantastic idea. I will absolutely do that the next time.
And that saves buggering around with ripping the bloody wheels off the knurls and trying to get them back on straight and true and all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
That's why we're here. We learn something every day. Thank you, Chris.
I'm disappointed that never occurred to me, but absolutely, that's definitely something I'll be doing.
And again, for anyone on here, rules being rules, check before you do this, because I don't, some clubs may or may not allow that, but it's a kind of a neat way to do a better job on the front end.
Yeah, I mean that's I honestly try to avoid doing anything to the front, because I know that once I yank the wheel off, it's not going to be the same as it was.
There's a whole better procedure for doing that, but it's long and involved, and it's never guaranteed. Taking the whole thing out as a solid assembly is a substantially easier and more foolproof method. One more question for you. Do you normally replace your braid on your Scaly cars?
It's not normally, no. It's not my favorite braid. If I'm replacing the braid, I don't replace it with Scalextric braid, generally speaking. I'll try to find the softest, tightest woven copper braid that I have on hand.
Okay. If you do, or if anyone is forced to use Scalextric braid, the way Scalextric puts their braid on, they do like 2 wraps around the guide plate. So you can take that all off, and with some CA, glue the braid onto the top surface of the guide holder, then put it down and around, so you're eliminating 1 full thickness of braid, which lets the slot, does 2 things, lets the slot or the guide reach a little bit deeper into the slot. And on some Scaly models, some of the wheels are inherently off the track. So, the 10 or 15 thou or 20 thou you pick up by just having 1 piece of braid coming out oftentimes lowers the front end, so that when you do true the front tires on your Area 1 or whatever tire razor thing, they can be a tiny bit lower and still touch the track.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. And that reminds me of one of the other things that I usually do, and that is, like you said, the Scalextric braids usually come with 1 folded forward and 1 folded back.
Yeah.
And the 1 folded forward is underneath to just kind of help hold it in. What I usually do is just go ahead and fold that back so that it backwards. Yep. Most of the time it doesn't add, any lift to the front. The guide's already in as deep as it's going to go because of the front wheels.
Yep.
But just doing that keeps them from getting, because if the one that's under pointed forward is a little bit outside of the top, the bottom one, and it'll catch on the rail joins and get all tangled up and messed up. So just by folding them both backwards, they'll last longer and not get ruined quite as quickly.
So let me ask you this, Chris or Greg, on a Scaly track, which type of braid do you prefer? Do you prefer the braids that come with the Scaly cars, or would you recommend using like a copper braid, or there or any other type of braid?
I hate Scalextric's braid. It works fine for its intended purpose. If you've got a magnet in the car and you're going around and around and around, it's fine. You should comb it out and smooth it out and make sure it's as flat as possible. When you take the magnet out of the car, the braid is stiff enough that it tends to force the guide out of the slot. It has a little bit of spring to it. So I would invariably change that for some thinner. I personally like tin braid, which is the silvery kind of stuff, but any copper braid from NSR or Slotted or Scale Auto is a lot better than what's in there. It's thinner and, you know, a little more flexible and pliable and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I don't like Scalextric braid. Most of the time it's acceptable. You know, if unless I can confirm that the braid is what's causing the problems that the car is having, generally I'll just leave the Scalextric braids on there because I don't like having to buy more braid. But when I do believe that the braid is causing problems, then I'll get something nice and soft and thin and tightly woven. And if it's nickel plated, you know, so be it. Usually the from the braids that I've tried personally, which is not very many of them, the nickel plated does seem to be stiffer. So I usually gravitate towards the copper.
And again, Kelly, this is, I mean, rules of the club preside over everything. So, I mean, if it is a stock class and you're not allowed to do it, don't do it. But in a world where if you're just looking for better performance or having fun with your buddies and stuff, get rid of the Scaly braid.
Yeah, most of the time when we're running Scalextric cars in the analog club, any braid is allowed, just because it's so easy to have a crappy set of braids come on a Scalextric car. Even for Scalextric braids, sometimes the braids are crappy, and so you just have to replace them.
You trim the motor posts. You know, on the bottom of the interior, you have two posts that come down that hold the motor, help hold the motor or the back axle in. If you trim them, it gives you, I know you said you don't loosen the chassis at all, it still gives you that little bit more flex.
If I want to make the body float, and yeah, I mean, usually need to trim a little bit to let the body do much motion, but 9 times out of 10 with a Scalextric car, you got to trim the chassis all around or get rid of some other interference between the chassis and the body in order to allow it to float at all. And that's usually a no-no, you know, with the box stock clubs, my box stock club anyways. But generally speaking, if it's not obvious that you took out a bunch of material, they don't care. So if you just kind of take some sandpaper to it so that doesn't have any flashing or anything that catches on the body, then it's fine. But sometimes you'll have a guy taking an 1/8 of an inch around the entire chassis, and this is like, what, dude? Seriously? That's now you're dropping weight from the thing. So okay, back it off a little bit maybe for next time.
Yeah, on mine I run. We do a historic road, so any Trans Ams, any Camaros, and I run 3D printed chassis on ours. Our club actually allows that. So would you like
to take off from where I left off and talk about what you guys do?
Yeah,
go for it.
I like the mainly NSR and Slotted in my main cars I run. Most of them are standard, apart from NSR rubber on the back. You can't beat the 917 Porsche rear soft ultra bit tires. They are lovely. And I had about 5 or 6 different cars on my track. When I revarnished it, I hadn't just going round and round and round, just putting new rubber grips down onto the track to give it that extra grip. But the white kits, when I buy an NSR white kit, the chassis is thrown away. I don't bother with that chassis. I just keep a white, you know, they do the different color chassis. I mainly stick with a white chassis. I keep the motor pod, that's the same. I have floating front wheels, which means it's independent. One wheel's independent. You do the you know the little eyelets that hold the wires in on the Scaly electric cars? Well, if you get a slotted hollow axle, you can actually use that with a little washer on it, and you have one wheel that's free running all the time. The actual other wheel locks the wheels onto the axle, so you've got no drag on the front whatsoever. And basically, the motors, we run up to 22.5. So I put the orange Shark motor in most of my NSR cars, and that is it basically. On the slottits, we rerun suspension on the Group C's, so you have full spring suspension. The orange slotted motor, I can't think it's the 2,500, I think it is, maybe 3,000, but that is the limit. We don't go anything above the black 5,000 RPM motor. But again, rear tires, it's mainly NSR rubber on all of it, and they run on wood tracks. We don't have magnets because it's a waste of time, because you've got braid. Well, mine's got copper braid on my copper tape on mine. The two club tracks have the silver coated braid, so the magnets aren't no use anyway. So, and you add a little bit of ballast here and there, and you have free floating chassis. So it's the looser the car is, the better. I mean, so mine, I think the fastest lap on mine is 4 seconds. It's a 4 second lap. And that was a Mosler going round. So I run a 908, and that's 5 seconds on the East Devon, track. So that's quick.
Muzzlers are nice.
What was that?
Sorry?
I love the muzzlers. They are just fantastic.
They're nice, but it's such an easy car to drive.
Yeah.
And it's like the Radical. I don't know if you use Radicals over in America, but over here, if you have an LMP class, everyone will have a Radical. So basically, you got no the NSR are gone. The slotted cars are no one uses them, because everyone runs Radicals, because again, they are quick cars. But the Muzzlers, any Group GT car, you just don't run them.
I'm not familiar with the Radical, or is anyone else?
Is that the Scale Auto?
Yes, Scaly Auto. They are like rocking horse poo to try and get a hold of. Hold on, I'll go and get one. I'll go and get one from my box and show you.
Okay. Is that the one that Alan is starting to sell, Greg?
Yeah, he's got them in stock I think he's had them for a while, but it's like an LMP of some sort. I forget what specific model.
Like a brass.
Yeah, it's an LMP car from a couple of years back, but it looks pretty much, it's an open car, right? Because it was an LMP2 car, as I recall. So it's an open cockpit car with the little round, very rounded wheel arches that hug the tires closely. I think you can only run an inline chassis under it. I don't know that you can put an angle winder in. Certainly on my track, I could chase down a Radical with a slotted angle winder Audi R8. I don't think my Radical is as quick, but obviously it changes from one track to the next. If it's a long track with a lot of long straights, then the Radical is going to be good, because it has one of the long can, high torque motors.
The Radicals can be run as an angle winder, at least some of them can be.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, but you could have the
flat sixes. So
yeah, flat six in it, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't tried that. Mine's still got whatever it came with. I don't remember now.
They were really popular in the UK with Typhoon motors in them, and they were just deadly. Anything with a long straight. I mean, those things are deadly. But they died a death with us now.
Okay, I love that slot car box. That's awesome.
Nice looking parts. Yeah.
Old boxes are
I
great.
love the slot car box. It's awesome.
I had it specially made for by a cabinet maker.
Wow.
My local cabinet maker done it.
Cool. Nice.
Okay, show us your radical.
Yeah, that would be another subject for a lot of discussion. Would be
Your slot box.
pit boxes and slot car boxes. Yeah.
That's a radical.
Mhm.
Here we go.
And I've put the
Yeah, there you go. Martin
3D
was
printed
talking about that.
chassis. I
Yeah.
had to take the wheels off the front because I was running another radical yesterday and I broke the wheels on the other one. But you can see how loose
Oh yeah.
I have it all.
Yeah, for a car like that, it would probably be pretty loose for me too.
Who printed the chassis?
It's a Spanish company, CAT.
Did you get it through Shape
Oh,
Braid,
yeah.
or did they sell direct?
VAT.
No, it's on. They're advertised on eBay. It's a
On the UK eBay, maybe.
yeah, it is eBay. But it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And again, the I don't know. That's the Nissan that my daughter destroyed the other car. But again, it's all been changed. Rear suspension. So, but it's all completely. All the gears were changed on it.
Nice aluminum wheels as well. Whose wheels are those?
The
They look like
slot it.
Oh,
I think that's the front ones. No, sorry. The front ones are NSR
NSR.
and the rear ones are Slottits.
Yeah.
And they've got the, as I say, you got the NSR rubber 917 on the back. And I
Are
use
those the air system wheels?
yes, these ones are.
And have you got anything in the air gap, or you just
No,
air?
no, it's just the tires just glued on. But I use, do you know, I don't know, in the printing trade, they use something that it's like an alcohol that wipes off the screen printing stuff. When you do screen prints, the actual screen print, they wipe this off with an alcohol base, it's got high evaporation, and that's what we use on the tires to soften the tires, oil and that. And it does soften the tires nicely.
Yeah, what I usually use on NSR is either just straight naphtha, lighter fluid, or the Scaly tire cleaner, which is mostly naphtha because it's convenient. Nice little sponge applicator there.
You got to be careful on some of the NSR and some of the slotted rubber using a very pure naphtha, because you can split the tire along the molding lines.
Yeah, definitely want to less is more.
Yeah, so what I found on that, if you're using that, if you go down to the hardware store and you buy regular barbecue fire starter liquid, right? That regular fire lighter liquid that we squirt on a barbecue to make the charcoal burn, that stuff works way better than lighter fluid or naphtha in terms of being much more kind to the mold lines on the tires. And what I found too is that the grip that you get once you've polished using that, it seems to last longer than what I was getting when I was using pure naphtha or lighter fluid, Ronsonol or Zippo or whatever.
I wonder if that's because it's got some oil compounds.
It has a little more oil in it. Yeah, it's a slightly different distillate of some sort, Greg, I'm not sure. But it was pure desperation at one stage that got me to do it, because I'd split so many tires. Because I have a friend down here who's an industrial chemist, and so he provides me like 99% pure naphtha. And man, that stuff was splitting my tires like you just couldn't believe at one point. And
I use ferroliquid. Ferroliquid washing up powder. You know what you use for doing the washing of your dishes?
Yeah,
that's all I use. Detergent.
When you're cutting the tire or what?
Oh no, when I'm gluing and sealing it onto the hubs, before I do that, I wash them all out with. I used to wash them out with lighter fuel, like you said, and it's split. But I use ferroliquid on the inside, and that's
okay.
a problem.
Yeah, but this I was talking about it once I've ground the tire, and then when I start polishing,
I just use 3-in-1 oil.
Oh, yeah, that works too. But I use the firelighter liquid while I'm polishing like that. That's how you get the really good shine.
Quick question, Greg, have you disabled my screen sharing?
Didn't enable it yet, but I will do that now.
I just want to try one thing here.
Go for it.
If I can.
Is it just? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There we go.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. For all you Mosler guys or NSR guys, or anytime you can install one of these, this is a slotting plus axle tube. So it's a solid tube with 2 bushings in either end. One of the big problems with, or one of the problems on a wood track with high grip tires is that the rear end of the 2 uprights flex independently of each other. So any flex in the uprights causes a misalignment in the bushings, which causes friction, which causes problems. And if the uprights can move independently against each other, that can introduce a lot of chatter into the car. So these are made by Slotting Plus. They clip right in like double flange bushings. They come in 3 widths. You put these in and glue them in. I had to trim, as you can see, the front half of this complete tube to clear the axle. But what it does, it locks the uprights. The bushings are frozen with the tube. So even when the back end twists and flexes a little bit, both bushings are perfectly in line. So it makes a massive difference on any car you can fit one of these into. That will make your Mosler and or any other, these were originally designed years ago to alleviate the problems with the Ninko chassis, Ninko hop and a bunch of other things. But anytime you can use one of these or build one of your own, it is worth its weight in gold.
That's similar to what we used to use in the 70s and 80s. We used to run the brass chassis slot cars, and that system was exactly the same, but the can on the motor had a slot in it, so the back axle, that tube was then soldered to the actual motor.
Right. I mean, now the motors are so small. I showed a couple of motors last week that are like a quarter of the size of this, so you can run sidewinders. But yes, this is exactly the way it was done, and one of the benefits of running an axle tube, because both your bushings do not rely on the uprights to remain in alignment. So a big help for most of today's plastic cars.
It also really,
sorry,
I was going to say, it also stops you getting that dreaded the red pod snap. Those lugs snap off, don't they? So easily.
Yeah. So with this, I mean, you can see it looks like a little bit of dirt on the edges of the flanges. It's not. It's some rubberized CA to hold the bushings in. So invariably, what I do is just take a Dremel or a file and sort of take the points off of the inside of the axle cups, so I'm not stressing the axle cups as much. Then pop this in and then glue it in, which is cures all kinds of issues.
Back to the tires, guys. Am I wrong? But I think on my NSR rubber, I use the Nsr Tire Oil, and it seems to last a lot longer if I rub it in really good, let it sit a day before the race, and run that tire oil. It lasts almost the whole night. Where if I use naphtha or something else to clean the tires and soften them, it doesn't last the whole night.
Well, you can, I mean, you can certainly, you know, there's a lot of the European guys, a lot of the Italian guys soak their tires for ages and ages and ages. You can use Nsr Tire Oil if you wish. It is basically 3-in-1 oil in another bottle. So if you like to pay an extra few dollars for the NSR name on there and impress your buddies, like, go right ahead. There are some differences in oil, but yes, if you just put some on with your fingertips so it's a bit shiny and leave them overnight, I mean, oil will penetrate the rubber, and the longer it's on there and the more that it's on there, the more it will penetrate and soften the tire. There is always a trade-off. I know a lot of the Italian guys, NSR made a machine that rotates the tires in a little oil bath. And I know a few buddies that put their tires, glue the tires on, true them up, put them in the oil bath and let them spin for 24 hours in a bath of oil. They end up being sticky like that glue they use on magazines. They call it booger glue or whatever the hell they use it. Great grip, but you've basically rotted the tires, and the guys will replace those every single race. So I know in proxies, and I know Dennis goes through the same thing we all do, is how much oil can I put on these tires? You know, they'll be grippy as hell for the first race, and then they'll drop off the car after the first event or after the fourth event. So it's always a bit of a toss up. But if you just use 3-in-1 oil or any light machine oil, you can save yourself a whole bunch of money, but you're not going to get the NSR logo on the bottle.
I never use oil when I prepare tires for a proxy.
Yeah.
So very seldom even use it when I prepare tires at home.
Yeah.
I'd rather get the grip out of the compound than out of the treatment.
Yeah.
Well, these, I don't know if you can see how shiny they are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that's been raced about a week ago, and I cleaned them, and they are so sticky, it's unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, so all the cars are. I mean, when I took that photograph of all the Sunoco cars sitting on the track, I was literally going, pulling them off because they'd actually stuck to the track.
How long do they last when you do that?
Sorry?
How often do you have to change the tires?
I haven't changed them at all on that one.
I mean, do you get a couple of race nights out of them, or do you get a whole season out of a pair of tires?
That's done a 6-hour race, that
Okay.
car, and I haven't touched the tires on it at all. And that's just by keeping them clean, keeping them using. I use that Printer's alcohol and 3-in-1 oil, and that is it. And I say that car there has done a 6-hour race.
And you're running primarily on wood, right?
Yeah.
And what's the paint? What kind of surface on the wood?
Mine is varnished with just normal dull matte varnish on it, or whatever you call. The 2 club tracks, I think they're just varnished as well, painted and varnished.
I think as long as you don't just like go overboard with the oiling, then they'll last a fairly good amount of time.
Yeah.
I usually do what Russ does when we're running a series with NSR tires. I'll clean them with like the Scale Auto dauber thing, just to get them shiny and good grip. And if I feel like the grip has fallen off too soon, then I'll rub some oil into them the night before and then clean it with the Scale Auto thing right before the race. But like Dennis was saying, sometimes that grip falls off so quickly, and you're running the rest of the race like you have no grip because you started the race with too much grip. So sometimes I'll just not clean the tires at all, just so that I'll start off with the same grip that I end up with, and I feel like it's more consistent. I don't get pissed off at the fact that I lost all that grip after the first 2 heats.
Yeah. And you still have to, you know, there's no discounting chassis prep and chassis weighting, as Dennis said, you really want to use the grip of the tire as opposed to outside forces. So you can do a lot of chassis tuning and weighting and a lot of things that will enhance the grip of the tires over and above. You can get a poorly set up chassis with sticky tires, which would be fine for a few laps. You get a well set up car with good sticky tires, and it obviously lasts a lot longer and works a lot better.
We run a
I
little
agree,
bit
it's
different.
all in setup.
We run a little bit differently here in Australia, or in Sydney at least. Most of the tracks, or there are no plastic tracks that we run on. They're all routed. Most of them run a Ferrador compound, goes on the surface, and then has a clear coat over the top of it. There's an argument there that says that the clear coat negates whatever you put down first, so it doesn't really matter. But it looks like nice tarred surface when you finish there, so it looks the thing. Preparation, wipe down with a wet rag, maybe a little bit of soap, wipe that all down. I put the throttles on auto, cars run around 200-300 laps or something like that while I'm playing around in the garage doing other things. They run a line around, get out there again, wipe it down again. When the guys come, wet rag with a little bit of soap on it, liquid soap, run the tires up, do a few laps, practice laps, get into the groove. By the time race time's ready, the tires are nice and sticky. Having said that, majority of people run the local MJKs over here. I don't know if you guys have seen them, used them, or whatever it is, but they'll stick like the proverbial to the blanket. Once they're all rubbered up, that much rubber left on the track at the end of a meeting there, they're doing their job, and we get really good close times and great fun, which is the main thing you're after.
The MGKs are urethane, though.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's urethane is, urethane and silicone, you really can't do much of anything to them.
No, they're not. There's no silicon in them. They're not silicon.
No, they're urethane, but I was saying urethane and silicone tires, two different tires, but are both basically impervious to any sort of coating or treatment you want to do. And both of them grip very, very well. So the difference in prep between urethane tires and rubber tires is quite a bit different. So we run most urethanes here as well.
Well, we'll run the MJK ones, but we won't run the silicon. The silicon have a definite. They'll peel the surface off after when you're driving, and so that you don't have a racing line afterwards, and you can noticeably slipping and sliding afterwards there. So we tend to stick with the one brand if we're going to use. If we're going to use standard tires, that's fine. Everyone uses the same. But if it's usually the rules of the class that sort of govern it, mainly availability that you can get for that car, for that class, to make it more interesting, more even.
Yeah, no, silicones are, and I was just, since this is sort of a global chat, I was including silicones, but in actual racing terms, silicone is basically 99.99% US based.
With magnets.
Well, that's the other thing. We'd being a routed track, no magnets whatsoever on it, on anything. So yeah, it's all down to car prep. Much the same as everyone else has been saying. The setup and everything else is just out of the box. It's a nice idea, but it can never happen. There's too many mods that need to be done. Little tweaks in here and there, but
Gary, would you like to take an example? An NSR or slotted or whatever kind you typically race on your typical track, and kind of do what I did. What do you normally do when you?
Yeah, much the same as what you did. You just out of the box. You have a look at it. Most of the Scaly Electric ones, if we're running, say, the locally brand muscle cars over here, the Falcons, and they've just released a new Tirana and everything else, which is you can't buy it over here anymore. It's just sold out instantly. The sort of things people are waiting for. Those sort of things, you have a look at them. They always stand too high, so lower them down just a little bit. A lot of chassis float. You unscrew it so it just floats a little bit. Axles are all glued down. Motors, it is what it is. It stays there. The hubs haven't really had too much trouble with the standard plastic ones that are on Scaly Electric. if they're good and they stay on, that's great. Or generally the local tyres, the standard scale electric tyres aren't real fantastic. So if it's available or allowed in the class, put MJKs on it. They make a full range for all the different classes that we use, different rim sizes and whatnot. Having said that, we're getting too much grip sometimes with it, popping axles, spinning hubs and things like that, just running just standard tires on there without any grip factor or anything like that, just a normal weathering in and wearing in. So a lot of classes have switched over and using a full slotted rear end, either whether it be angle winder, sidewinder, or inline sort of thing, depending on what the configuration is. Because once you start replacing something on the rear, because the axles are knurled, you either got to machine the axle flat, which is a pain. So you just go and get the slotted complete kit, put the hubs, the rims, and everything else on, and then turn down the old shattered hubs and put the inserts in there, so it looks all nice and legit. And yeah, if you can get away with it, it's good. But yeah. But apart from that, yeah, most of the stuff. Front end's the same. Get all four wheels touching. Some guys like to put super glue on all the front tires just to get the no grip, so it just slides around the corner. It's all balanced. Yeah, horses for courses.
Well, I mean, it's good to hear that great minds think alike, I guess.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think once someone finds out about it, it gets around the world fairly quickly.
Does anybody have something different than what me and Gary and some of the other guys?
I can add a couple of things.
Dennis, since you're going to say something anyway, I wanted to circle back around to something you asked earlier. You asked if I think T. Longhurst filled the air gaps on his NSR system tires. Do you do yours? And if so, what do you use?
Okay. Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to talk about. Okay, so I have a wood track with braid, but it's not magnetic braid. It has the surface is painted with a paint called UMA, which is urethane modified acrylic. So it actually provides a little better grip than the regular flat latex, and it's a little more accommodating for different types of tires. For example, I can run a silicon tire car and then run a rubber tire car right behind it. I run very, very little urethane because of the fact that the urethane tires leave a dust, and then the silicon or the sticky rubber just picks it up. But sticky rubber doesn't mind a very clean track, and of course silicon loves a clean track. But most of my cars are on rubber, and so let's say I take like one of the new Sideways Group 5 cars. I just had one there the other day, one of the new Celica Toyota. I'll take that. The first thing I do, I'll look at the car, check that it's all straight. If I can see that I'll take the body off and I'll check the chassis. If the chassis is not flat, I will take the whole thing apart and I will put my chassis down on a steel. I have a flat steel plate that's nickel plated, and I'll put the chassis down on that and hold it down with a whole bunch of magnets. Put it in a Pyrex dish and pour boiling water over it and let it stand until the water is cold, and that will flatten the chassis. Take it out, dry it off, reassemble the whole thing. Make sure that, then what I generally do if I'm going to be racing the car, I know that I'm going to change the tires because the stock rubber doesn't work that well. And generally I change the rubber to the slotted N22 compound, either the 1171 N22 or the 1172 N22, depending on the car and the size of the tire and how much width I have. The 1172 is a little wider than the 1171 and a little bigger in diameter. So it depends on the car. But the first thing that I'll do is I'll take the wheels, take the rubber off, put it in my lathe, and the solid section in the middle of the tire, in the middle of the wheel that holds the tire in position, if it's not already an air gap wheel, I will make it an air gap wheel. I'll put it in the lathe and I'll actually machine out a piece in the middle. Problem with that is on most of those tires, they are already undercut on the inside of the rim And so you can't take out very much. I could take out about a 0.5 millimeter depth around there, but it's enough to get a piece of very light foam. Now, Thunderslot have those foam inserts that they sell, and Mazzetti Racing is now selling them as well. It's about a 4 millimeter wide little donut of rubber. You put it in there, you grind it down until it is about 20 thousandths or 0.5 millimeter bigger on diameter than the outside edges of those two shoulders that are there, right? Then you glue the tire on over the top. Now, before I glue any tire on, the very first thing I do with any of those molded tires is I turn them inside out, and I check for all the little bits of flash that's molding flash that's in there. I use a pair of cuticle scissors and I cut it all off. Make sure that there's nothing in there that's loose, that's out of round, right? And then I'll clean the inside of that tire off with some lighter fluid or something like that. Or sometimes I just even rub it with my thumb until it's nice and dull. Then I'll put the tire on over the top of that foam insert, and I'll glue the beads around the edge with super glue. I'll put the tire flat, and I'll just pull back the tire a little bit and super glue on the end of a toothpick, and I'll just feed it into the little gap all the way around the tire, both inside and outside. Then it goes on to the tire truer. I use a hoodie for most of my work because it's all aluminum wheels. I have actually, believe it or not, I have two different axles that I'll use, one for NSR slotting plus those guys, and one for slotted, because there is a couple of like 1/1000th difference in the size, and they're actually loose or tight depending on which one you're using. Chris, did you want to say something?
No. I just want to.
There you go. That's the stuff. There you go. That's exactly what I do. I was looking for pictures, but I couldn't find them.
Yeah,
besides which, he's got pictures of hot Asian chicks as well on these, so that helps.
Well, yeah, those are you're not supposed to see those. Those are my keepers on the thing.
It is other hobby.
I guess.
They're the same hot Asian chicks in Toronto that I see when I'm telling me that there's hot Asian chicks in
Toronto. I can't tell you how many. It drives me nuts now, the number of pop-ups and ads.
Terrible. Anyway, let's talk about.
Anyway, this was the pre-made donuts. So I used to use some old 24th or 32nd scale foam rubber blanks, tire blanks. I would cut these, so that's on the top with the air ride wheel. Stage 2 is the sponge cut into strips and then glued into between the flanges. And then step 3, as Dennis said, these have been put into a hoodie and cut. And as he said, you can see that on the bottom picture, the sponge is just proud of the flanges.
Yep.
And what I'll do is I'll put the tire on the wheel before I true or a bare wheel and see if the tire is either cupped or convex. And then I will compensate a little bit with the insert so I don't have to take as much off of the tire in the final truing process.
Yeah, I tend sometimes to just to true them so that the footprint of the tire that's above the foam inside is the only piece that trues. If the rest of the tire looks pretty true, I might just leave it because they do crown ever so slightly sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's exactly right. Thanks, Chris. I don't bother to glue the inserts. The foam, I don't bother to glue that into the tire. Most times what I'm using are old ones that I've soaked off of 1/24 scale cars, and they were on a 0.420 inch wheel. So when they come off, they're small by comparison to the 13 millimeters or whatever you need. So they stretch on quite a lot, and and then that works well. So. Okay, sorry. So Ray, I guess that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thanks a lot.
All right. Then I'll, then I'll reassemble the car, and then it's a matter of setting up. I always set up on a board, and I have an aluminum setup board with a slot with a recess that's the same 10,000th recess as my track is, and so I'll set the car up so that the guide is as far in the slot as it can get. The front tires will be trued and coated with nail polish, and then I'll set the front axle so that it's just riding on the track with the guide in as deep as I can get it, and of course just enough clearance at the front. And then I'll start playing with the pod screws, depending on the particular car. Nowadays a lot of the pods have got 6 screws, 2 at the front, 2 on the sides, 2 at the rear. On my track, I generally take the ones on the sides, take them right out, because the cars seem to work better with the screws front and rear, and not front and side or side and rear or whatever the other combinations would be. Sometimes I'll just back them off further. My track doesn't need a lot of movement. I probably back the screws on most slotters and NSRs. I probably back the screws off maybe just a half a turn. The body's the same thing, just about a half a turn. And then I'll go and put it on the track and play and see how it goes. And then I'll start making some little changes. For example, on the Group 5 cars, there's almost nothing I need to do after that. They run really well. Some of them like to have their pods taped up, and then I will start experimenting with tape, either across the chassis or longitudinally down the chassis to tape the whole pod to the chassis. And I will play with the with the position of the tape and the type of tape. Sometimes I'll use medical tape. Sometimes I'll use fiber tape. Sometimes I'll use the black plastic insulation tape, because each one gives a slightly different feeling to the damping that provides.
Do you aerodiet your motors in?
All of my motors are screwed in usually, and if they're not,
you get the screws with the on the sideways cars as well. But I when we changed the pods on ours, because we use slotted pods, we aerodiet the actual motor in and through the holes, and that just makes it all airtight then.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't done that. Sometimes on some cars, if I've got a chatter that I can't get rid of, and the motor is screwed in, I will get in there with a hot glue gun and hot glue them in.
Yeah.
But generally on my track, I run the short can motors on everything, because the torque characteristics work a lot better for my track than the long can cars do, and so I don't have as much chatter problem because I don't have the high torque motors. I'd rather have high revs and gear them differently. So I don't do that a lot. But on the older NSRs, like all the classic NSRs, where the pods did not have screws, I've drilled and tapped the motors and the pods, and I screw them in. Yeah, because our racing out here is very casual, and there are not a lot of rules. And besides which, it's my track, so it's my rules, right?
Same on my track. My rules.
Yeah, so that's what I do. I'll still add a little bit of weight here and there, depending on the car. Like on the slotted DTM cars, for example, if you do the tires the way I was talking about, they fall over because you get so much grip that you just can't handle them at all. So the pods are loaded up with all the tungsten weights in just about every magnet position that you can get, and then still some lead on the side of the chassis. But a lot of the other cars don't need it. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I do.
Can someone kind of explain the benefits or the reasoning behind putting the foam rubber donuts inside the air wheels?
If you haven't tried it, you wouldn't understand it. But the smoothness, basically what you get is you get the smoothness and the grip of foam with the long-lasting, with the long-lasting tire of a rubber tire. it jumps the
Peter.
the traction and the grip and the smoothness of the car just up a whole notch. Turns it all up to 11.
One of the sort of the biggest issues that we suffer with in modern day 32nd scale plastic cars is hard tires. And all of the rubber tires we use, all of the urethane tires we use, all of the silicone tires we use, I classify as hard tires. And I'm comparing these to what a lot of us sort of grew up with and ran, which is a sponge tire.
Yeah.
So any of these tires, urethane, silicone, whatever you want to call it, the cars are so light that going around a corner, the tires will not compress because they're too hard. So on a normal wheel with an extended ridge, by the time you true the tire, you've got, sometimes, 20 thou of rubber over the ridge, which tends to further harden the tire. So the more compression you can add into the tire, either a taller sidewall or by adding foam in an air wheel, you basically essentially increase the depth of the tread of the tire, make it softer so that as it corners, it can compress and load more progressively. So as Dennis said, you get a smoother, more consistent handling car. And the added compression of the tire certainly adds grip.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah, makes sense. That as soon as you started talking about hard versus sponge, I'm like, oh, okay, so you're basically trying to give as much benefit of spongeness to a hard tire as you can by putting some sponge under the hard tire.
I see Tony K has come on and he's complaining that we've shared all his speed secrets now.
Yep.
Have you guys changed the gears on the Nsr F1s?
Yes.
Have you found problems with the because the gear wears before the car even gets on the track, doesn't it?
Well, that's not a gear problem. That's a setup problem.
Yeah. No, I bought one straight out of the box, and I done 2 laps, and the actual tore the whole gear apart.
Which, the crown or the pinion?
The crown.
Okay.
I haven't had that problem on mine, but I haven't run it that much. But the NSR inline gears have never been great.
Yeah,
I had an Audi LMP with inline, and it got slotted gears very quickly because it chewed its gears.
Are you, Tony, are you using the nub of the motor on the pinion to center the crown?
Yes.
Okay. That crown is a bronze crown. And when you go around, so the channel on the crown rubs on either side of the motor shaft to keep itself centered.
Yeah.
Right? When you go around left-hand corners, the edge of the crown flange rubs on the motor shaft. And in left-hand corners, the motor shaft is spinning opposite to the direction of the crown face. So you absolutely must lubricate that. And or second best idea is to switch to a slotted Teflon boss, or the Teflon coated bosses. By far the best way is to use spacers to center the axle and completely eliminate that nub as a centering device for the crown.
I was going to just say that on this one, I changed, I don't know if you can see,
yeah.
The gear is now a slotted gear.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you can see, you got 2 spacers either side to hold in the back axle in central.
Yep.
I'll
go you one up on that, Tony. If you take the car apart and put the stoppers and spacers on the inside of the bushings and the outside of the crown, and you got to fiddle around and use a bunch of different spacers, the crown can never move either way.
Yeah.
When you use stoppers on the outside of the axle, lateral pressure on the axle can, over a long period of time, tend to make the space or the stoppers move outwards, which now introduces lateral movement into your axle. And now you're back again using the motor shaft to center the gear. So if you take a little bit of time and feel, so you have all your spacers inboard, they can go nowhere. The only bad thing that can happen is the crown gear can come loose and spin on the axle. It cannot move laterally, so you maintain a perfect gear mesh.
But I've got a second one on build now anyway, so that's gonna, I'll try that on that one.
Yeah, you know, well set up spacers outside or inside make bugger all difference. It's only a longevity issue if and when, and I'm sure if you run Sidewinder cars, at the end of the race, you grab the car and there's a little bit of lateral movement in the axle where the wheels have moved out a little bit. So if that happens on an inline, now you're introducing the motor shaft to the face of the crown gear. And again, in left-hand corners, the motor shaft is spinning in the opposite direction of the crown gear face, and it just chews the crap out of the crown gear face.
And like it's been said, NSR gears are about as much use as a chocolate fire guard.
Well, yes, but it's not all the gears. It's not all the gears problem.
No.
Is it possible to over tire a car?
Yes.
Martin will tell you about my Jag. I had a slotted Le Mans Jag, and I put the slotted Formula One tires on the back of it, and it gripped well, it went well, and then it started to go, and it took out a Dunlop building.
Yep, there's quite some grip on that thing. But I'm just looking at my NSR. I haven't run it yet. I'm waiting for a pink crown to turn up. And mine was beautifully spaced. I'm showing you there. I mean, the spacers it came out the box with, superb. Yeah, I put a blue chassis on it, but I mean, it came out the box spaced like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, cool. Really interesting, Chris, what you say about putting it inboard of the bush ends. That's
I mean, generally, yeah, NSR use the 540 set screws on their wheels, and they tend to grab a little bit better than some of the smaller ones. Well set up, but having said that, Martin, after a long time, those wheels can move laterally on the axle. If they move inboard, that's a disaster because they freeze up the back axle. If they move outboard, you get lateral play. So for a bunch of reasons, it is far, far better to put your spacers inboard. It's a pain, it's a huge pain. And you got to go out and either cut spacers or buy some like varying thicknesses of spacers to 5 thou and stuff. Once it's set up, you can set lash in both directions of like set the lash up, and it's not gonna go anywhere. It can't go anywhere. But if it's set up well now, you're not gonna get a performance improvement by moving the spacers. You're going to get a longevity improvement, which could be a performance improvement if your wheels move around. When I set up, I've got a couple of cars and a couple of proxies that are angle winders, and an angle winder is by far the most one of them. It's a precarious situation in gear alignment if the spur moves in and out. And now I'm taking to, before I send it away, I will put a little bit of Loctite on the gear, on the spur so it doesn't move. Now mount the wheels and leave the axle a bit shorter and then Loctite the wheels onto the axle because I know over a 10 race series, I'm going to have some lateral movement in that and it's going to bugger me up down the road.
Russ, you had a question?
Yeah, I do have a question for you, Dennis. what type of paint did you say you use on your track?
Sorry, it's called UMA. It's made by, it's now part of Rust-Oleum, but the actual name of the paint is UMA. It stands for urethane modified acrylic. You get it at specialty paint stores like Dunn Edwards. You won't find it mostly you won't find it in Lowe's or Home Depot. So you need to go to a specialty paint store. You can buy it on Amazon. The issue with it is that it is white and has to be tinted. And so you have to either get the paint store to tint it for you, or you have to buy your own tint. And you've got to be careful not to, well, the paint stores will tell you not to put more than 2 measures of tint per gallon of paint, and that's what's on the specification sheet for the paint. But the reason for that is because it's essentially, the paint is essentially a primer, and it's supposed to be a primer for hard to paint surfaces, which makes it actually a very good paint for painting plastic tracks. And the manufacturers feel that if you start tinting it, that it reduces that adhesion issue. But for us, certainly painting wood tracks makes no darn difference. And if you tint it to a medium gray, then it sticks very, very well to plastic tracks too. And there's a bunch of guys in Colorado who use it, and that's where I found out about it. There were Scaly tracks and Carrera tracks all painted with it. And the nice part about it that I found during those times was that it's so tolerant of different types of tire.
Are you polishing it, buffing it, sanding it, anything?
When I put it down on my track, I'd sanded the MDF first, and then I gave it a coat with a foam roller. I think I gave it 2 coats with a foam roller, and I didn't sand it after that. I just left it, and it works fine. You know, if you get any little bumps here and there, you could probably sand it down, but the foam rollers give you a really nice finish anyway, and I just left them like that. So I've done 2 tracks with it now, and a couple of others that have been done around here with it, and everybody's been happy.
Yeah. Okay, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I just used an acrylic and or a latex enamel, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And it seems to work good, but it would be nice to have a little bit better finish, I think.
Okay.
So, interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. I seem to remember, was it someone on here, one of the previous times, that said if you're going to use a latex paint, use the cheapest paint you can get?
Yes.
Was it you? No doubt. Between you, it's either you or me that knows all these weird things, right?
You guys just can't keep your mouth shut, is what it is.
Yeah, use the cheapest paint possible because it has more rubber in it.
Would anybody else like to address that topic? Talk about your favorite type of car racing and preparation for your favorite type of track? Anyone? Bueller? Maybe I'll call on somebody.
Bueller. Ferris Bueller.
We seem to have knocked that one out the park. Anyway.
Well, it seems we all kind of have the same kind of process, you know. Take the car out, give it a once over, maybe toss it on the track, and then, you know, start doing the necessities. Take out the magnet if you need to, put on your appropriate tires, true your tires, do what your normal tire prep is, drive it around some more, do your other.
It is quite fun actually to do that, to put the car on the track right out of the box, run it a couple of laps, see what kind of lap times you get, and then start. And I think what was it? Oh, one of my Mazzettis, I think, the MR slot cars that I took out of the box, and it was running like 7.4 second laps. And by the time I was done, it was running 5.8s. So I took a second and a half out of the car just by the things that I normally do.
Do you find Thunder Slot, you don't need to do much to them, do you?
No, well, I still put the foam inside the wheels.
Yeah, apart from that.
But I use the stock tire. I use the stock everything. I don't even bother to tape the pods, and they run like scalded cats. I have changed the guides now to the new. There's a Thunderslot have just brought out a wood track guide, which is deeper and thicker, and so the cars go even a little better with that. But other than that, there's been no change.
I use the sorry again, leaning into the box. I use the Scale Auto guides. I like them.
Yeah, I like the Scale Auto guides too. But you know, if there's a good Thunderslot guide that's for the Thunderslot car, then I'll use that.
Yeah. But
I
think that's the only car company or manufacturer that I've actually done very little to the car to race it.
Yep.
I organized I organized an IROC race one time. We had about 18 guys show up, and I had 5 Ninko Porsches brand new in the box. And I said, nobody's allowed to even test drive one. We just put them on the track and started. And they all had the Ninko hop. You wouldn't believe the bitching and whining. And everybody had to deal with it.
Our club races the little Fiat 500s.
Yeah.
And even with them set up, you just go, if you go flat out and you forget to brake, they're like that into the corner or straight on.
We have more crashes in 3 minutes of Fiat 500 practice than we do in like 2 or 3 nights of Mosler racing.
It's brilliant though, isn't it?
Keeps the marshals busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed last week or last meeting you had talking about the variable speed controls as well, the voltage, and that eliminates a lot of the problems that you have with setups as well. Just smooth things out. We do that over here as well. Horses for courses, you know, Jags, XK 120 Jags don't run the same times as a bloody Mosler. So why should they be so competitive on the track running at 12 volts, 14 volts? I've even seen someone put up to 16 volts. So you're just tearing gears out and ripping things to shreds. But the technology has come so far with the grip for tires, with the tracks and the surface you put down. That they're doing times there where just plastic hubs just disintegrate with the amount of grip that you get sometimes around corners and with the power that you're putting out. So just bring it down. More fun, a lot easier, more to what they should be doing.
Well, Gary, that's a really good point. How many people actually, when you take out a car, do you try and sort of adjust them to behave more like the actual car themselves?
Well, not so much behave like it. Like the, say for example, the Ninko Jags, the K120s and that, the early Ninko class, there's a lot of fine cars in that, the Jags, Ferraris and so on, all come out with the NC1 motors and beautiful cars to drive. Then for some reason they decided to put NC5s in it, 2s, then 5s, and it was just snow. Then they stopped making them all together, of course. But they put so much power into it that when we started running the classes, we couldn't get Ninko 1 motors anymore, so we went to MT1. Then they died, you couldn't get them. So whatever you've got, you sort of keep going and try and find some other motors that are around the 14,000 RPM or less. You don't want the massive, big, high revving things. And they're just great to drive and more suited to what that era were. They were fairly close, compact. We run the same motor that we run in the Jags and the Ferraris in the NC1 class in the Ninko Porsche 997 class. But because of the angle winder setup in the Porsche, those things obliterate the other class. Even though they're running the same motor, run at the same volts, just the whole setup is totally different, a lot smoother and just so much quicker. And there's nothing during a night's racing there to have 10 cars finish within 3 or 4 tenths of a second of each other over the night. It's really close. Yeah, the common thing is you fart during the night and that's it, you've lost. Yeah, you've got to concentrate on driving, nothing else.
It's nice when you have the ability in a club to run classes that are kind of single make, single style, or single make anyway, like you're talking about the Ninko Classics or the 997s. We have a club out here in Glendale that does much the same, and that racing is also always very, very close.
Yeah,
for that reason.
At the end of the night, everyone has a great time because it's no one person or one type of car that dominates everything, and everyone has a chance and everyone enjoys themselves. You have a few beers, few laughs and everything else, and you kick back, and that's the whole idea of enjoying the hobby. If you're going to take it too seriously, you might as well just go down the commercial tracks and sit there and play the wing thing and go around at half a second, doing 200 kilometers an hour or something or more. But yeah, the other passion that we have is Martin will justify. We do involved in proxy rally racing for a few years, and I've got the 3 tracks in Sydney here in the Sydney Metro, all around about the same size. The rally track that I've got separate to me road track, the rally track is 35 meters long, single lane.
Wow.
So, and Bluff's seen it too because we've been over. Sent the proxy rally over to him a few years back, and that just runs one. It's just single braid. It's all, yeah. Well, thank you, Martin. There's yes. He won it one year. He's never forgetting about it. Every time I see him, he's got to put it up. Yeah. Every time. Yeah. There's his cup. Yeah. On you go. So, and it's it'll never stop. The no taps or anything, and it's just all braid, and I only run 10, maybe 10.5 volts over the 35 meters, and you get the fastest times. Unbelievable, some well set up track cars again. Just absolutely blistering, and polyurethane cover over the top of the circuit, which is basically plastic. The tires, once they're sticky up, they'll stick like anything. And it's very, very close.
Martin, maybe we should do, since you're so good in 132nd, maybe you should take Lloyd's challenge in 143rd.
I've got a couple of 143rds, actually, but they're still sitting in the cupboard.
Yeah, I bought one 143rd car from Jack Bentier's, and still haven't made it yet, only because it's a beautiful Alfa Romeo. But yeah, I'm lying. I got the WRC.
I can tell that your beliefs are moving. I can tell that.
I got the WRC set from Artin or whoever it is for the grandchildren. They absolutely love those 143rd cars.
Oh yeah. And
I leave the magnets in so they can just like nail them. Usually run them about 8 volts for the grandchildren, and they just laugh all the time. Fantastic.
What's the rally track I got, Martin? Graham's one.
Oh, that was the Castello del Forme. Yeah, we went to Assisi in Italy and ran on Graham Lane's track when it was the full track. Oh, it's just out of this world. We ran the WRPs around there, guys. It's just a fabulous track. I mean, the guy, he's just built a work of art there. And that was it. Yeah, do you ever run it now?
No, it's still but it's in front of all my cupboards now in the garage. I'm waiting for my boy to build an extension onto the garage so I can actually fit that in on its own, because my track takes up a whole of the double garage.
Right. So you bought Graham's track?
I've got Graham's track, Graham's rally track. Wow. His rally track I have actually got.
Yeah, because it went to the club, didn't it? And then Graham went back abroad he's gone to France this time. I tell you, mate, when you get that, the
updates yesterday.
Yeah, when you get that sorted out, we'll have to have a WRP round in your garage, mate.
Oh yes.
Fantastic.
Make it a long weekend, and I'll come over.
All right, mate, you're on.
Did everyone get that photo I sent up that just entered the slotted tires? Just on the thing there? Little
No.
photo? No?
It comes through as a download that we've got to download. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
downloaded it.
Anyway, they were a set of slotted 15s, nice grippy tires and everything else. I put on a SEX Corvette running in the GT class that we had over here. 11 volts on the road track. I've only got a 14-meter 3-lane road track as well, timber. And they're the results after halfway through the night. I was wondering why it started to slip towards the end of the race. I'm like, you only got 3 lanes. So you got 3, I think we're running 3-minute or 4-minute heats on each lane. So it had done 8 minutes, 10 minutes, flat out, really flying. And I found out why. And this was the end result of the tires there. They blistered and the whole thing just peeled off. Just too much heat getting in.
Blistering the 15s on my track as well.
Yeah. So there's too much grip. There is such thing as too much grip.
Yeah, absolutely.
My Jag, I had this, say the silk cut Jag I had. Martin knows. It's that had so much grip. It was unreal. And as I say, going through on the old Shepton track, as you come round to come past the start line, you had a 90 degree, and it come round on itself, and it actually took out one of the Dunlop buildings, and that was it. It broke the chassis. It broke the back of my car.
Yeah.
This Dunlop building, and that was due to too much grip going into the corner.
Yep. Yeah. We've had a guy build a nice router track. First time we're running on it, there was so much extra grip that we got off it there. It was snapping guides, just snapping the guide flag in half, just coming in there just into the corners too quick and just snapping chassis mounts, rear ends. Oh, it was carnage.
Unfortunately, my granddaughter doesn't know anything about grip. Oh my God, they have.
Yep. That's how much literally just melted, and all that white and green stuff there is the track scenery, the parts of grass and crap like that that'll get thrown up on there. But yeah, that's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it.
My MX-5's going in for MOT tomorrow, and the rears look like that. It'll be okay, won't it? It'll pass.
I was going to say you should send.
Where are you getting it done? Down the road from you.
Funny enough, with a neighbour, yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Send a set to Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
What did you do to those tires again?
Nothing. They were straight out of the box, put on the car, and it was just it had so much. Well, you can just see the track surface just underneath it. That's part of the track there, so it's not really smooth. It's a little bit rough, but it's my track. I didn't care. But the things were there's so much grip on there, and it's just only cleaning up with soap and a little bit of soapy water on a rag, run the tires up, get them warmed up, get a good track surface, and the car was absolutely flying. And halfway through the last heat, and that was it. It just all of a sudden it starts bouncing and it's slipping and sliding, and all those big chunks there are just welded onto it for it's all melted.
Wow.
Got your money's worth out of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's only heat. That's it, straight out of the box, put them on there. So I've only got 10 minutes, 15 minutes out of it. That's it.
Oh.
That's
That's
the
the
kind of
old
stuff that
days
I
when
see.
you've done the old foam tires, and they used to come apart of, because we used to ego stick them onto the hubs, and after a while, when you keep cleaning them up with the old lighter fuel, they used to go down a straight, and all of a sudden you see a big plume of foam go off everywhere, and it exploded.
Those tires are what I see when I've put too much oil on them and too much fluid and stuff like that. That's what I get when I do that.
Yep.
Yeah, basically you weren't running them at the standard pressures.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pirelli will tell you should have had at least 2 psi more in those tires.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey guys, did any of you see that track that was on Bring a Trailer? There was a slot mods track that's been sold.
I saw that one.
Yeah.
I've just been looking at it now. The final price that it went for, $65,500.
It's probably still less than it originally cost.
Yeah, I think it was 75 originally. But it was at like $1,000 for days and days.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it started picking up slowly, and then it was at 6,000 for a couple of days, and then it was this morning when I looked, it was at 20,000 with an hour to go, and I've just looked at it now, and it was $65,000.
Yeah, Greg, that's that one that Dan and Pat were talking about going back and forth on.
Yep.
There it is.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And another $6,000 to move it.
Yeah, $4,750 for the guys to take it apart and wrap it and put it in a truck, and you still had to fly them there and home and hire the truck yourself and whatever.
Yeah.
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 I had a friend move mine. We dismantled mine myself and we put it in the back of my mate's van and brought it home.
Usually costs just a couple of cartons.
Yeah.
And the truck's in no condition to drive on when you get there. Or you.
It'd be interesting to find out who bought it. I mean, obviously somebody with more money to spare than anything
some guy by the name of Mergado, I think his name was. It's on there, but I've unshared it now.
Has anyone driven a Slot Mods track?
Yeah, in the one in the museum or in the
down in Tacoma.
I'm sorry.
Did you actually pull the trigger on the controller on that, Russ?
Yeah, I did at the one at the Tacoma Dome, but they've got the voltage twisted down so low. I mean, was not fun at all, but it was neat. It's a good track to look at, but and it might be fun if the voltage was turned up.
Well, that's what I was wondering about, because I mean, they look great, but I don't know. Some of the sight lines are kind of weird, and I don't know how they'd be to actually race or to drive on one normally. I don't know.
Yeah, I saw the one at the LeMay Museum, and I saw the people driving around holding the controllers, just watching their car go around. I wasn't about to pay to do that, but it is a beautiful track.
They got one as well, a replica one down at Phillip Island. Same thing, guys down in Melbourne built it for down there. So it's a massive track. It's like 65 meters or something. It's huge setup there. And same thing, because it's open to the public and people can use it. It's kids use it, so it's just snail pace going around. They say it's a bit hairy when the voltage is up there because you can just barely see the end of the straight, so you've got to judge where it is, and otherwise things are flying off into walls and everything else in there. So yeah, I suppose that's a good thing of keeping the voltage down.
I don't know if you can see that. It's a picture of us dismantling my track from where it was. That is where the cars. I took a photograph. That is the actual picture where the driver's part. Is the 4-lane colours. That's where the Sunoco picture was. So that is how we took it apart. We had to cut it to get it out of the room. And unfortunately, I cut it on the straight.
So where did that come from? Is that one up in North Devon on the RAF base?
No, that was the one up at Dudley.
Oh, right. Yes.
It went from when I was racing on it in the 80s, it was in Margate in Kent. And it went from Margate to Swindon to Dudley, and then Dudley to my garden.
So has the Dudley club packed up now?
No, they were in the room next door to where that was, because that was in a curry factory, believe it or not. And they had their other track, which was then being also dismantled, and it's now gone to a place just down the road from where they were, because Dave sold the curry factory and everything had to move. So that's why he sold that track. And the other track went to a local leisure centre where they had an RC club, and I rescued that one.
Martin's frozen.
It brought back so many memories. When I see it was on eBay, and I said to Teresa, the wife, I said that's going to go for a lot of money, that, and I couldn't believe I only paid 110 quid for it.
Is this the other track, Paul?
Sorry,
This photograph that I'm sharing, is this the other track?
which one's that?
No, you can't see it. Okay, let me try that again.
Yeah, I can see it. The big blue thing.
This one.
Yeah, we can see that blue
Blue one.
track with blue walls and gray surface.
I picked that up off the internet sometime, and my file says that was Dudley.
Yeah, it looks familiar as it's the next door room.
It probably will. If it, yeah, the Dudley track was blue. It did have blue borders on it.
Yeah, and it was a much bigger room next door, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd you.
But no, it was. I'm glad I saved it, really, because, as I say, I raced on it in the 80s, and it was quite good because it was right next door to a pub. So you, in between race heats, you used to disappear into the pub and come back out, drink your pint quick, get back out and race again.
That's
And
disgusting.
then drive home.
That's
Disgusting.
terrible.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would. Yeah, you would know about that.
Well, I kind of wanted to circle back on Thunder Slot because obviously everybody says very good things about Thunder Slot. I haven't purchased one yet, and I haven't looked to see what all they offer, but I only ever see anybody talking about the Lola. How many models do they actually have? Is it
Right now they have four. They have four basic body styles. They've got a Lola Coupe, the T70 Coupe. They've got a T70 Roadster. They have a McLaren M6, and they excuse me, and they have the McLaren Alva, the M1A McLaren, and they have them in a number of different liveries, and they have white kits of all of them, and they're all rockets. None of them are particularly. The McLaren Alva particularly is kind of out of scale because it's the same width as all the other cars, and that was a much smaller car originally. So the cars are 1/32 scale in wheelbase, but not in width. But they're very, very pretty. They're beautifully made. They run like crazy.
They're metal frames, aren't they?
No, they have plastic frames.
Oh.
The guy who started Thunderslot is Giovanni Montiglio, who was part of NSR originally.
Mr. Mosler.
It was his Mosler, yeah. And so he's taken that. So the quality is right there with NSR pretty much. They run what are nominally 21,500 RPM short can motors, but they perform way better than most other 21.5s. They have the stock rubber tires are very good. The wheels are a little different to everybody else's. Excuse me.
COVID cough.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Sorry about that. The wheels are a little different in that the ridges, they have an air system wheel, and the ridges are not as tall as everybody else's. So if you're starting to put other people's tires on them, they don't work quite as well. And the Alvas have 3 ridges in them. So they look like some of those early Ninco, the Ninco race or the Ninco lightning wheels that had the multiple ridges. So that it gives basically a flat surface on the outside, but it's very light. So the first thing I do when I get those is I machine away the middle ridge so that I could put my foam in them. But it's only on the Alvas so far that that's happened. But they have maybe 4 or 5 liveries in each one of those cars. So they're very pretty, and they work really well.
McLaren's nice, isn't it?
The Sunoco is great. The only thing that I worried about it is it's just a little too shiny.
Yeah.
Right. They've put a very deep clear coat on it, so it looks fantastic. But if you're thinking back to what the cars looked like in the 60s, they didn't quite look as shiny as that. But they did a gorgeous job on the tampo printing of that car. It's really, really well done because it's a difficult color. It's a difficult scheme.
Well, I got that car. I've actually got that car, and when it was in the picture of all the others, I was thinking, oh my God, all the different colours, and even the NSR Porsche that was done purely for the American market. In 2009, I think they've done it for, didn't they? It's for the race up there. I can't remember what it was now. But that blue is a paler blue than all the rest.
What you're talking about is this guy.
Yay! I've got that one.
I've got two of them. I won.
Oh, okay.
And since you're talking about custom liveries, here's a Thunder slot for you.
Yeah,
That's
that was
nice.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the T70 coupe that they
correct.
have, or coupe for us guys in America.
So is that
Does-
MGD
does-
livery? The MGD livery, you could buy that, could you?
Yes. Yeah, that was only, you could only get that in America.
Well, this was
Right. I've seen pictures, but I've never seen one in the flesh.
It was a limited production as a handout prize, but they actually made more that were kept overseas for sale. But
Does-
I think this one was 250 made, and the Porsche was 140 made.
Does Electric Dreams carry the Thunder slots, or
Yes.
do you need to buy them? Okay.
Electric Dreams has them.
Okay.
We took a Thunder slot to club the first time we ever got our hands on one. I think it was the T70 Coupe. The yellow one, I think, was the first out, wasn't it?
That's what I had.
Yeah.
And we slapped it on the track, and our hotshot Craig, that's the fella, our hotshot Craig ran it round the track, and he got there within like a third of a second of the outright club record. That was literally brand new, out of the box. Didn't glue the tires, didn't throw anything. The pod was set up perfectly. The body float was set up perfectly. What a car. The guys obviously, that McLaren's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they obviously spend a lot of time setting the car up properly before they ship it. I haven't got the Alva yet.
That's the Alva
Yeah, I haven't got that yet.
in the original colors. It's possibly even quicker than the M6 McLaren, certainly on my track. And then there's the T70. Now this one was a white kit that I did before they brought out the number 21 logo, the livery. So I did this one myself, including hand lettering of all the lettering down the side.
And that's good.
Nice.
Have any of you guys seen that YouTube video of Era Racing at I think it's the Daytona Classic or something the other day, where the T210 outbreaks the T70 on the first lap, and then the next thing you see, they get up in the Daytona bank, and then the T70 just goes whoosh and disappears.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's Era Racing. It's been up in the last 2 or 3 days. It's a fantastic video.
Yeah.
I think that the Thunder slots are quicker than the ASRs.
Yeah.
Yeah, then the NSR Classics, yes. With a similar motor. Yeah, I would agree.
And I mean, so I've got several NSRs, and I've only got 3 Thunder slots. So the white kits, that's the next thing for me, I think.
So is nobody bitching and moaning about the Thunder slots not being perfectly to scale like they do about?
Oh, there are lots of people moaning about that, but those of us that race and that don't care about speed, we don't care about things like that. Right.
If you want something accurate to scale, go and buy a die-cast model from one of the Italian manufacturers. We're out there racing.
1 rivet, 2 rivets, 3 rivets, 4 rivets.
But it's funny you should say that about die cast, because that was a class that we actually did a while ago. Was you could get as many 30-second scale die casts off the shelf sort of thing, and bit of digging around, cutting and shutting and everything else, and then put a HRS slotted chassis straight up underneath it. Made for some very interesting racing,
I can imagine.
especially for first corner braking. There's a lot of weight being carried around.
Martin and Tony, do you guys race many scale autos?
I've got 1 scale auto. I think it's the it's not the it's the Viper. It was a white kit, and I had to put that together, and no instructions, and it was a nightmare.
About 1 million pieces.
Yeah, and you get 1 million pieces left over, which you think, well, what does that go on? But unfortunately, it's gone back in the box because it's undrivable.
Yeah, one of our guys builds.
You got the same. You got it for the same race, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we got a lot. One of the guys builds them for the Disca digital races, so I race them for that. But no, I don't own any. I'm not a fan of them.
I want to just show you the front wheels. What I was on about, the independent. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
And that's with the little bush going through it, the eyelet that holds the Scaly Electrics.
Yeah, I think Chris
Yes,
showed them on that
slotted
photograph.
It's a slotted axle. You put the
Slotted,
little
yeah.
eyelets either side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, what we often do, and I think even in Chris's photo of the rear wheels, they were on an axle that had a little washer soldered onto the end of the axle. And you do the same thing. So you can use a solid axle, you just solder a washer on one end, pass it through the wheel, through the chassis, and lock the other one on, and there you go.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, say, no one's cottoned on about that at East Devon yet, so that's one of my secrets.
Christ, they've been around for 65 years, for God's sake.
They don't. They seem to keep everything standard.
Craig, can you raise the audio for that segment, please?
Yeah.
Just in case one of the guys from East Devon's watching.
That's his duty. Oh, he's got a drop pin in the back of his car too. When you hold the car upside down, you can't see it, but when you put it on the track, it drops in the slot. Better watch out for that.
Where I was going with the Scale Autos guys is I think if you've put those away, you might want to bring those back out again and do a little work on them. In a lot of the higher end proxies, the GT3 proxy, the Group 5 proxies, that chassis that's been dominating. And
the newer chassis, the new angle winder chassis, right?
Take the angle winder chassis and get the bloody goddamn long cans out of there and put a sensible motor in the back. And
with whose pod though? With
Scale Autos. Yeah,
the Scale Auto Sidewinder pod.
Yeah, the Scale Auto pods are the best pods on the market, hands down, bar none, not even close to anything else.
Well, both me and Martin were entered in a race in France, which was this year, which was cancelled. And we both had to, all of us, the team, had to build a car each. And yeah, that's the first and last time I've ever built one.
I've got a half a dozen Thunder slots, a couple of dozen NSRs, all kinds of scratch built cars, and 2 or 3 Scale Autos, and my Scale Autos are definitely the best handling cars out of the bunch.
What's the secret of setting them up, Chris?
Well, most of them, hang on, I'll see if I can.
I guess the first thing you got to do is you got to get the R chassis, the latest versions of the chassis, because the early chassis were horrible.
The R chassis and the
red Sidewinder
RT3 motor pods.
Taking notes.
Sorry?
Yes,
notes.
Martin's taking notes.
Of course, that's great. Why not?
Let me see.
It's a mark cut. I'll never remember.
You can always watch this later.
You can watch the rerun.
Keep going, guys, and I'm gonna dig up some pictures if I can.
We're waiting on you, man.
Yeah, the red.
What chassis in that kit, Martin?
Oh God, it's not the R. It's not the latest one.
It's a black one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are black ones and grey ones. There are a couple of different stiffnesses of the chassis itself, but the new ones are similar to the Black Arrow chassis, where they have all those little cuts and little things
with a little screw
to change the stiffness of them, and
they got all little screw holes, haven't they?
Yeah.
I was thinking a £2 club hammer for mine.
They basically work very well.
Okay, I'm going to look into that
chassis that they're using for the Lamborghinis now.
Mm-hmm.
Which have all the extra slots, and you can add screws to.
Yeah, that's the sideways chassis like that.
Yeah,
the Lamborghini and the BMW that they just brought out, the M3, the M6 GT3.
The ones I just sent up were for back in 2012. So I don't know if they're
we were talking about tires earlier. I just wanted to mention, I don't know if anyone was aware of it, but Sideways has a pretty decent set of rubber tires out as well. In 2 different hardnesses, and I actually found what they call the Pro Speed tires, which was a little harder, actually worked very nice.
That'd be like a Super Grip NSR or like a N22.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but they seem to just hold up better.
Okay. Cool.
You could actually put them on a 15-inch wheel and not even have to glue it, and it would stay where you put it.
Oh.
So how's that motor held in then? Because that's a
Thank you.
shorthand motor, isn't it?
That was my question. Yeah.
It'll be screwed in and then
Just
hot glued.
screwed in.
Screws.
Screwed from either end.
It's screwed in, and then I've put a tiny little dot of like a shoe goo. Actually, it's E6000 on either side of the end bell where the motor carrier is. There is a huge fallacy to think you need any sort of an adapter to put a short can into this. We've been bolting and soldering motors into single motor bracket flanges for 100,000 years, so there's no issue there. But for a wood track, getting rid of the great big heavy F-can motors, this is a typical S-can. I think this one's a Piranha 22,000 RPM or whatever it is.
Early one.
Chris,
Yeah,
is that suspension on that, or is that just the
Yeah.
bolts you've used to hold it?
Sorry?
Are the bolts, have they got suspension on it, or is that just the bolts you've used to hold it?
Now the next racing secret comes out.
Yeah, I use, it's hard to see, but I have had there's a couple of sources now, but for years I've been using urethane and or silicone washers below the pod lug and the chassis and above the pod lug and the top of the little nylock nuts. That basically puts my motor pod in suspension in a silicone coating above and beyond so that the pod can rotate torsionally, which is what you want, without any flop and flap. Dennis was talking earlier about, leaving the pod loose to create some movement, but then damping the movement or controlling the movement via tape. And I think there you're starting to see more and more guys now discovering that free movement in the pod is like a bad shock in a one-to-one car that you see going down the highway. If the wheels and pod can just flap around uncontrolled, the car is not consistent, it's not predictable, and it doesn't load well in the corners. So years ago, I had one of the urethane tire makers make me up a bunch of urethane washers. Since then, I've convinced Ernie Mazzetti of Mr. Slot Car to make some little silicone washers that do exactly the same thing. So by either using one or two washers above or below, I control the flex. The nylock washers stop anything from coming loose, so my pod screws never fall out. That's a big thing in the chassis, setting them up. Using a small can motor. Small can weighs about 8 to 10 grams less than an FK 180. So if any of you guys remember the history of the Porsche 911s when they had the great big motor behind the rear axle, you had a really bad pull or moment of inertia. So once you get an older 911, and I know this firsthand, once you got them sideways with the motor back there, they were damn hard to get back. So a lighter motor creates less sway and swag from the back. It's great for, and this is for wood tracks. The whole setup for magnet tracks or plastic tracks is completely different. That's why you'll see a lot of long cans in plastic car racing. But for wood tracks, having a big chunk of weight back there is just not a smart idea.
You know the screws that go through, your screws that come through to hold the motor pod in, do you take the thread off and just leave the top thread for the nut to bite onto so that the motor
yes,
pod
good
runs through?
idea, but the machine screws I buy only have threads, sort of like the tips of them.
Yeah.
So most of the shank is just a smooth shank.
So do you open the holes a little bit?
Again, it depends. Not really. I don't need to, because the smooth shank and the chassis plate, the holes in the chassis plate are actually quite big where the original screws go through. And these are a smaller shank on them, so that works fine. The other little things I do, I get rid of the little feelers that hold the spherical bushings on the outside of the motor pod, because a self-aligning spherical bushing by definition is also self-unaligning. And for the spherical bushings to actually move in their housings, there has to be some movement. So you don't have a very precise fit between the spherical bushing and the plastic motor holders. So I snip those off and use some proper single flanged oil lights in the back, which hold oil better, they're more precise, and they get rid of some of the chatter issues and other things associated with those silly spherical bushings.
So those silicone washers, are they just available in Australia? Are they available to the UK?
I originally had them made by the guy who ran Dirt Hobbies. I'm in Toronto, Canada. So
sorry.
Dirt, no,
It's
it's
slightly different accent.
Yeah. Dirt,
right. I've got an even slightly different one as well.
I can't tell the difference.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's because you're
Dart
drunk.
Hobbies is the guy who started up Dart Hobbies is a member of our club. Ernie Mazzetti from Mr. Slot Car Racing is opening up a new I've known him for forever, and we've raced together forever. So you can buy the Mr. Slot Car silicone washers. They come in two widths. You can buy those from Electric Dreams. There's probably going to be quite a few sites where you can buy those. Electric Dreams, I believe, now has a kit that includes a bunch of these little silicone washers, plus some flat metal washers, bolts, and the nylock screws.
And a little stainless steel wrench for them. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to interrupt and say that we're going to end the recording, but we're not going to end the chat. So if you want to participate in longer chats, you can come and join us live. For now, we're going to stop the recording. Everybody can wave bye-bye if you want to hang around and chat.
Yep.
See you later.